got to talking about the subtleness of idolatry. And we had defined it using the dictionary. We started looking at it from the biblical standpoint. We talked about some defining statements that God had made about idolatry within, some of the books of the Bible. And then we started talking about the things that every idol has in common. The first thing we talked about was how every idol is a work of man's imagination and do not come from God. And we began talking about how idols have no power of their own to do anything. And it simply all it is just represents a figurine. We talked about how they're made out of wood and stone. They cannot eat, hear, smell, or see. We talked about Dagon, the fish god statue, how when they brought the Ark of the Covenant in front of it, how Dagon and the statue itself actually bowed down before God. We talked about in Isaiah about them setting up graven images and pray to a God that cannot save. We talked about them using molten images. We even talked about Jonah, how they were praying to their gods and they threw him overboard as a way to try to appease the gods that they were worshiping. We talked about Habakkuk, who talked about, who warned people about the you can't tell a stone God to rise. It can't teach you. It can't save you. And it can't even think on its own. And then we looked at, the last thing we looked at was the book of Revelation, chapter 9, verse 20, where it says, "And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which neither cannot see, nor hear, nor walk." And so we see, even during the tribulation, you're going to have people who are bowing themselves down to false gods. I mean, literally it's going to be hell on earth during the tribulation. Can you imagine that? And you're still going to want to worship a false god?
Well, what more can he show you?
Yeah, but it shouldn't surprise us, because the Bible tells us we're hard-headed. And we're going to see that although idols are made by man and are powerless to do anything, mankind still chooses to worship to them. They choose to sacrifice and even to sing praises to the thing that they've made from their own hands, rather than simply just be obedient to God. And the first place we look at is Exodus chapter 32, verse 19. And it says, "And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing. And Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tables out of his hands and brake them beneath the mount." And here it is, he's just got finished communing with God. It even tells us that at one point when he came down from the mountain, his countenance was so bright from being in God's presence, they couldn't stand it. So here he is, he's coming down the mountain with these 2 tablets of stone, and there they are, dancing near a calf. It's like, well, they're scratching out the first commandment, they're already breaking it. And you think about that. I mean, he hadn't been gone for 40 days, and they're already going back to idolatry. In 1 Kings, it says, "Jeroboam ordained a feast unto the eighth month of the 15th day of the month, like to the feast that is in Judah, and he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made, and he placed in Bethel the high priest of the high places which he had made. So he offered upon an altar which he had made in Bethel the 15th day of the 8th month, even the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel, and he offered upon an altar and burnt incense." And here we have a picture of the king of Israel after Israel split in two, and he's creating his own gods, going back to a golden calf, the same calf that they had probably used during that Exodus passage, and he's made up a holiday, and he's worshiping this thing that he has set up. And when we think about false religions, isn't that what we're doing in a sense, worshiping something that we've set up, that we believe define us? In Hosea chapter 13, verse 2, it says, "And now they sin more and more, and have made them golden images of their silver and idols according to their own understanding. All the work of craftsmen, they say of them, let the men that sacrifice kiss the calves." And we get this image from Hosea. They're doing this out of their own understanding. The Bible's very clear. If you look all through Proverbs, look all through Psalms, God says, "If you will seek me diligently, I will show you." And we get this idea, those who diligently seek me shall find me. And we see this theme, put continually within the Bible. But yet here in Hosea, we're talking about people who would rather, instead of looking for God and trying to understand God on God's own terms, they want to create a shortcut. Well, I can't understand God because he's too big, but I'm going to believe in this. And when we start talking later on in the series, what we're going to begin to see is that some people will actually use science as their God. Well, it can't be that God created heaven and the earth because that's just not scientific enough. That's fairy tale. So we're going to believe that, boom, and Big Bang happened, and next thing you know, we've got tadpoles swimming in rivers, and we have you 3 million years later. Well, okay, well, still, what got it all started? Well, that doesn't matter because God didn't do it. And if you watch the movie Expel with Ben Stein, have you seen that one yet? I'll have to let you borrow the DVD. Because at one point, they're actually interviewing this very famous scientist, and he says, well, if you tell me that God created everything, I can't do that. But if you tell me aliens brought life to Earth, well, I'll believe that. It takes just as much faith sometimes to believe in these. In fact, it takes more faith to believe in these gods that have just been made up. Right now in our lifetime, we're seeing global warming has become a religion. Oh, we got to stop polluting the environment. Okay, I won't go there. In Romans chapter 1, verse 23, and change the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like unto corruptible man, and to birds and to four-footed beasts and creeping things. I love going into those places like, well, there should be a place over at Carbondale Mall that sold incense and little candles and hermit crabs and all this kind of stuff. You probably saw a few of those places in Florida. And what always amazes me is when you start walking through those stores, you come to this little section where they have all these little, you got little Buddhas, right next to little Confucius, right next to little, and all these little idols and stuff that people have made. And if you notice, they look like men, they look like animals, they look like things that we know of, and they look like, and people worship these.
Like on a keychain.
Yeah. Or my favorite thing is you got these little people, and they'll even turn Jesus into a little statue. Or the Virgin Mary statue. And you even see people around here in Henderson will have them glued to their dashboard. It's like, really? You're going to put Jesus on your dashboard and then cut people off in traffic? That's real Christian of you, But anyway. And we're going to see that in Jeremiah chapter 14:22. Are there any among the vanities of the Gentiles that cannot cause rain, or can cause the heavens to give showers? Art not thou he, O Lord our God? Therefore we will wait upon thee, for thou hast made all these things. And in this verse here, what Jeremiah is saying, now this is the time when Israel's in captivity. He's telling them, these gods that these Gentiles worship, they can't do diddly squat. So we're going to wait for you, Lord. And we see a lot of times that people will worship gods that in reality cannot do anything. They cannot make it rain. They cannot cure people from cancer. They cannot bring you answers of life's questions. They cannot do it. But yet still people will turn to them and believe that maybe if they just pray hard enough, maybe if they'll do so many good works, that then they'll get this God's attention. And if they would put half the effort into worshiping the Lord Jesus Christ as they do with these false gods, imagine the difference that God would make in their lives. Just imagine. Man willfully expends great amounts of wealth, time, and energy worshiping these false gods. They never count the cost as being too great or the ritual being too difficult. They are willing to go beyond anything God actually requires of them to serve these gods. And you can look all through time. One of the things that the Canaanites did that God actually abhorred is they offered children sacrifices. They would take their firstborn son or daughter and sacrifice it to the God they were worshiping in honor of that God. How hard must that be for a mother or for a father I can't imagine sacrificing Edie. There's some days I'd like to duct tape her to the wall, but I can't imagine sacrificing her to some God. God doesn't ask us to do that. But even back in those days, God wasn't asking these people to do that. But yet, they were willing to do it to appease their gods. Look at some of these cult members. You see they'll break the news every once in a while. These people are willing to sell every possession they have and go live on a compound and give away every bit of their dignity to make some cult leader happy. If they were to sit there and even tithe to God instead of selling everything, just the tithe, and faithfully serve God the way that they're serving that cult leader, imagine the difference that God would make in their life. But they're not willing to do that. In Jeremiah chapter 11, verse 12, it says, Then shall the cities of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem go and cry unto their gods, unto whom they offer incense, but they shall not save them at all in the time of their trouble. And what Jeremiah is telling them is these people are going to, incense was expensive even back in those days. Nowadays you go to Walmart, you can buy 10 sticks for $1. Back in those days they were very expensive because it was labor intensive. And burning incense was also a sign of a type of sacrifice that was being made on the part of the person who burnt the incense. And of course, incense is used in Judaism to represent prayers that are going to God. So you have these people who are burning incense, or offering incense to gods that cannot answer their prayer. And they're doing it willingly without counting the cost of how much they're having to spend for the incense. Not any problem. In 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 28 through 29. And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets until the blood gushed out upon them. And it came to pass, when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that there was neither voice, nor any to answer, nor any that regarded. And this, once again, is the story. You've got the prophet of God who sit there. He said, look, let's go ahead and settle this once and for all. You guys will go ahead and build your altar, and you put your golden calf on it, and you do your thing, and I'll do my thing over here, and we'll both call on God. And whoever God answers, well, that'll be the God we all worship. And if you remember, they're sitting here, and the Bible tells us this has gone out, and this has gone on from morning until the evening. So the entire day, they started out calling out to Baal, asking Baal to come and consume the offering. Then when that didn't work, they started dancing around the altar and crying even louder. And now it's got to the point they're taking knives and they're cutting themselves, drawing blood. And we're talking not a little gash, we're talking they're cutting themselves. It says the blood poured upon them, trying to get Baal's attention. Think about it. Where does God say to cut yourself like that? So if they had put their efforts into crying to God the way that they're crying to Baal, don't you think God would have heard their cry immediately?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, but this right here, no, this isn't going to work. In 2 Kings, chapter 3, verse 27, then he took his eldest son that should have reigned in his stead, and offered him for a burnt offering upon the wall. And there was great indignation against Israel, and they departed from him and returned to their own land. So here it is, you now have a king of Israel who is going to burn his own child to offer it to this God that he worships.
Why?
Because he believed that by doing that he would gain God's favor. Once again, he's worshiping a false god. You know, and so you see that he's not even really in the same, nowhere, the only place where, God told Abraham to do that with Isaac, but he stopped Abraham before he could kill Isaac. And he offered up a ram, and it was a test of Abraham's faith. Abraham trusted God so much he's willing to do it without question, because he knew that, well, God promised me my son, and God can take him, God can raise him from the dead. He had that much faith. But here's a king who's offering his son to keep the city from being sacked. And it says, and people of Israel returned to their own land. They couldn't believe that this is what we've come to. 2 Kings, once again, a fun book to read if you're looking for all kind of human sacrifices and stuff. But Naaman was wroth and went away and said, behold, I thought he would surely come out and stand and call upon the name of the Lord his God, and strike his head over the place and recover the leper. Are not Edda and Pharpar better than Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be cleansed? So he turned away in a rage. He was mad. Here he's come to see the prophet of God for healing, because he heard this prophet could heal him. And Elijah says, go swim in the Jordan 7 times and you'll come out clean. Here's Naaman, this big, powerful general. Is this all God wants? Here's talking about this river's better, and this river's better, and this is more beautiful, and you want me to go do this? But how many people simply cannot take that? It's that simple. Trust in the Lord Jesus Christ with all that, they can't trust that. In Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 31, it says, and they have built the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I commanded them not. Neither came it into my heart. And God's saying, I didn't command them to do this, and this is nowhere in my plan. But this is what the children of Israel were doing to try to get God's blessing. They had created a false god that demanded sacrifices of great price in order to hear their prayers. Now this is what they invented in their mind. And they're willing to do this to satisfy the requirements they have put out for this God, to the extent they're offering their own sons and daughters. Going back again, if they had taken all that energy made to build those altars, and if they had brought that energy to the temple and said, we're going to worship God. Now I know the temple had already been destroyed by this point, but if they still brought it to the Temple Mount and worshiped, if they had gone to one of the other altars that had been set up by the patriarchs, and God would have recognized a right sacrifice of a bull, of a ram, of a sheep. He would have recognized it, and he would have blessed accordingly. But here they're offering something strange that God hasn't required. He doesn't require human blood. God's prohibitions against idols, idol worship, and false gods are based on several principles. One, there's no such things as other gods. These other gods are nothing more than man's imagination. Man trying to work his way around what God has proclaimed, and are actually instead they're worshiping devils. And this is the main reason that God forbids idolatry. We're going through a stage right now with Edie. You kind of heard us talking a little bit last night with Amy. I'll tell Edie not to do something, and then she'll go off and tell her mom, Dad said I couldn't eat any food today. Well, I said you couldn't have a snack right now. We're about to eat supper. You know, what she's doing is she's creating a false construct to get around what I have said. And it's the exact same thing that they're doing here. They don't want to do it God's way, the way God has said for them to do it. Because in their mind, well, it can't be that simple, it can't be that easy, or who are we to let God push us around like this? So they create their own religion that goes around what God has said in hopes of trying to get to heaven without having to follow God's way. And in Exodus chapter 20, verse 4, it says, Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or is in the earth beneath, or is in the water under the earth. And he was forbidding because what would happen is when these things are created and are worshipped as a god, you're blaspheming God. You're worshiping the creature more than the creator, is what Paul tells us. So that's that's one of the reasons why that's there. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 23, it says, Take heed unto yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he had made with you, and make you a graven image or the likeness of anything which the Lord thy God hath forbidden thee. And while you take heed to yourselves, pay attention is what that take heed means. Pay attention. Don't forget the promise you made to God that you're not going to do this false idol thing. But yet we see that Israel did do that. In Jeremiah chapter 51, it says, Every man that is brutish by his knowledge, every founder is confounded by the graven image, for his molten image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them. And what he's talking about is you've got people who are so bent on doing things their way. And we remember that term brutish also being used when we talk about the wrathful man is brutish. They're dead set. This is the way it's got to be. So they create this image. They create this idol. They create this false system of worship around it. And then they're confounded when they don't do things the way they thought it needed to be done. They're doing it that way, but their God still doesn't answer. Oh, here is Baal. Here is Baal. I mean, that's the demonstration of that verse. And they don't understand. It says that there's no breath in them. Their molten image is falsehood, but they're confounded by why their God isn't answering them. If we use Stephen Hawking's brain, the reason why their God cannot answer them because their God really isn't a God. And that's just the easy answer to it. But they don't want to see it that way. In Titus chapter 1, verse 2, it says, In hope of eternal life, which God that cannot lie promised before the world began. And the reason why I put that in there is because if there's one lie that God tells, then that means the whole Bible's thrown out. Can't trust it. So if God says there is no other God but me, yeah, you can take it to the bank. There's no other God but him. And so that immediately is one of the reasons why God says don't do it. Worship of false gods provides man with justification on how to live his life and a set of standards that he has determined for himself. Man deceives himself when he believes that the standards of false gods and false religion are of divine nature. All it takes is spending a few minutes with somebody who has a religion other than Christianity. And when you hear what they think is a good and moral life, sometimes it even sounds good, but there's always a flaw in it somewhere. Jehovah's Witnesses claim the reason why they don't celebrate birthdays, and they don't celebrate Christmas, and they don't celebrate all these other holidays is because nowhere in the Bible does it say to celebrate these things. Okay? And from one point you can kind of see that. They do believe, though, that they're the watchmen on the wall because the Bible says we're supposed to warn others of the wrath to come, which they do a good job of. I mean, they do that from their religious point of view. But where they begin to go off into areas that are wrong are the areas where they say, well, God's only going to save 144,000 are going to live with him in heaven. Nowhere does God say that in the Bible. So think of how many Jehovah's Witnesses there have been since that religion was started in the 1830s. So if there's only 144,000 in heaven, what happens to the rest of them? You know, there's absolutely no hope in that religion. But once again, they created a false set of standards, a false set of beliefs. In Deuteronomy, and you turn aside and serve other gods and worship them. It's easy when we look at our lives and we feel like our lives are in chaos to say, well, I've got to figure out some way to make it right. And if you notice, we always use the term, I got to figure out. If we would take a step back and say, okay, what does God say I need to do to get my life right? You know, we got people in America who are hurting, they're looking for answers. And instead of trying to find out what God would have them to do, what they're doing instead is they are turning towards spiritualism. They are turning towards demonology, if you want to be bold with it. They are turning to drugs or to alcohol or to sex. They're turning to cults, trying to find that answer, trying to find how they get in touch with the divine, to the extent that they cannot even believe the Bible as simple as it is. You know, in Isaiah chapter 55, verse 8, God tells us, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. And in Jeremiah 7:23 it says, but this thing commanded I them, saying, obey my voice, and I will be your God, and ye shall be my people, and walk in all the ways that I have commanded you, that it may be well with you. And those two verses, when you tie into idolatry, what God is saying is, God saying, don't mess with them, trust on me. All the energy we're going to spend worshiping those false gods, worship me. The way that you love them, love me, and see what I don't do for you. They should wonder why I just won't do it. It really does. In reality, worship given to idols and false gods results in both physical and spiritual death for the unbeliever. The participation in what should have amounted to shame and humiliation, and even emotional imbalances, can often happen when the choice is made to worship false gods. And we look at some of these things that people go through, people do, people have happen to them because they're worshiping false gods. It's amazing the progression that happens. If we think all the way back to Genesis chapter 3, verses 5 through 7. Now think about this. God has created Adam and Eve. They're in the garden together. And the serpent tells Eve, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods. Okay? Knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also to her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them were both opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. And if we look at that, first of all, Satan does a couple of things here. He tells us as the gods. We know there's only one God. But see what Satan has done in Isaiah, he says, I shall ascend to beyond the throne of the Most High. I shall. So he actually is seeing himself being on equal terms with God. You should be as the gods. You should be just like me and God. You'll know good from evil. Who wants to be called a dumb hillbilly redneck? Except for Honey Boo Boo and her family. Seriously. But who wants to be known as being stupid or being ignorant? Nobody does. And if I were to tell you, if you bite this fruit, this will make you the smartest person on earth. Don't worry about what God says. This will make you smart like us. We're just playing with the mind. I want to be dumb.
I don't want to look stupid.
Yeah, I want to look stupid. It's like, I see these kids at the community college. Back when that idiot on YouTube had posted the Simmons challenge, had a few idiots on campus actually trying to do that stuff. And you're sitting there thinking, what they would do, they'd find one of their friends who really didn't want to do it. Oh, come on, you don't want everybody to think you're a wuss now, do you? And they would use other language. But what they would actually do is begin playing that person's fear of not being to the same standard as the rest of them are, so that they would cave in. And you know what these people, these false gods, I mean, here's Eve, the humiliation she gained. Oh no, I'm naked. Oh no, I'm going to die now. I mean, think about it. All because she chose to believe. Exodus chapter 32, verse 19. And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh to the camp, and he saw the calf in the dancing, Moses' anger waxed hot, and he cast the tables out of his hands and brake them beneath the mount. Here it is again. Even though we've already used this verse, there are some theologians that have written books that says that when Moses came out, the Bible tells us this, but when they came down from the mountain, they were in their nakedness, dancing in front of this golden calf, naked. They were humiliating themselves, bowing down before this. Remember, they've ever been to a Western Sizzling when they have that giant cow in the front? They're bowing down to a golden cow, naked, praising it, singing it, dancing around it. I mean, if Moses hadn't been mad, Lord, do you see this? Look at these idiots. Seriously. And something that should have been their shame, they were rejoicing in it. Totally oblivious to how bad they looked. If you go on YouTube or go online and Google some of these cults that exist in America, and you see some of these things these people will wear, some of these things these people will eat, some of these things these people will do to try to gain favor with their gods. You know, you had the people that believed that the Hale-Bopp comet was going to come redeem them and take them up to the mothership. They were all dressed in black pants, black tennis shoes, and white shirts. Even the men and women had the exact same haircut, close shaven close to the head. Looked like a bad 1980s music video.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But they didn't see it. Okay? How about some of these people that will belong, for example, look at the Islamic religion, Muslim, you know, Islam. You've got women who are made to dress from head to toe with only their eyes showing. How is that worshiping God or loving God? I mean, well, we don't want our men to lust after our women. Well, so you're going to then dehumanize your woman and make her feel like she's supposed to look like a bag of flour? And this is supposed to bring God glory how? Their sorrow shall be multiplied that hasten after another God. Their drink offerings of blood will I not offer, nor will take their names to my lips. That's in Psalm 16:4. And David's writing this, and David says, I'm not going to participate in this. But their sorrow shall be multiplied that hasten after another God. In other words, they think they got problems now. Wait till they begin investing all this time in worshiping this false God. And watch the problems roll in. We've already seen with some of them just a few minutes ago. They're losing sons and daughters over it. Could you imagine being married? Well, honey, where did our son go? Well, he's back there in the wall. He's on fire now. Seriously. Let's go ahead and close this in prayer because it's time for us to dismiss. Go ahead and do it.
Okay. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for this day you give us. I want to thank you for letting us all come together here once again at church. I wish you would just reach out to people in church and let them know that who you really are, Lord. And if somebody needs to come closer to you, please let them do it. Keep your hand on Pastor as you bring the message. Amen.
Amen.